Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're tackling Mitolyn.
Mitolyn.
Yeah, you know, that supplement that's all over the internet. They say it can, totally revamp your metabolism and help you burn fat like crazy.
Oh, right. I think I've seen some ads for that. Lots of dramatic before and after pictures, if I remember correctly.
Exactly. And they've got this whole website packed with, glowing customer testimonials, explanations about the science behind it, and a breakdown of all their special ingredients. We're going to be focusing on their official website for this deep dive.
Sounds like we've got our work cut out for us.
We do. And look, I know a lot of you are probably rolling your eyes right now.
Right.
Another weight loss product, right? Another miracle cure. And you're not wrong to be skeptical. We are too, believe me.
Yeah, these things always sound a little too good to be true.
Totally. But that's what we're here for. We're going to take a closer look at all the information, see what's actually there, even if all we learn is how these companies market their products.
It's like we're going in with a magnifying glass, trying to separate the hype from the reality.
Exactly. So where do we even start with something like this?
Well, on their website, Mitolyn makes this big, attention-grabbing claim right off the bat. They say Harvard scientists have discovered the root cause of slow metabolisms.
Well, that should be good.
And it all comes down to, get this, mitochondria.
Mitochondria, those tiny things inside our cells?
Yep, those are the ones.
I vaguely remember learning about them in high school biology.
Right, the powerhouses of the cell, they basically take the food we eat and turn it into energy.
So Mitolyn is saying that if you don't have enough of these mitochondria, your metabolism slows down.
That's the gist of it. They claim a study of over 1,700 people showed that those who struggled with their weight all had low levels of mitochondria. And on the flip side, they say people who were slim and toned had tons of them. It's a bold statement, for sure, trying to connect this one factor to a complex issue like weight.
Okay, but how do they even know how many mitochondria someone has? Can you just, count them up? Yeah.
Well, it's a bit more complicated than that, but there are ways to measure mitochondrial function and density in cells. Mitolyn actually cites 4 specific scientific studies to support their claims, which we'll definitely dive into later.
Okay, so they've laid out the problem. Not enough mitochondria equals slow metabolism. So what's their solution? Do they have some magic mitochondrial injection?
Not quite. Their solution is, of course, their supplement. They claim Mitolyn can boost your mitochondria levels with a blend of 6 special nutrients and plants.
Ooh, sounds fancy.
They really play up the natural and exotic angle. They've searched the globe for these rare, powerful ingredients.
Right. On their website, they list things like maqui berry, rhodiola, hematococcus, amla, theobroma cacao, and schizandra. Some of those sound like they're straight out of a fantasy novel.
They definitely choose their words carefully. It all sounds very impressive. And just to be clear, it's not some complicated potion or ritual. They've packaged it all up in easy-to-swallow capsules.
Convenience is key these days, right? But okay, so we've got these supposedly exotic ingredients. Do we actually know if they do what Mitolyn claims? Do they really boost mitochondria?
That's the million-dollar question. It's one thing to list a bunch of ingredients, but we need to examine the evidence. Are these ingredients all they're cracked up to be?
And what about those 4 scientific studies they mentioned? Do those actually support their claims about low mitochondria and slow metabolism?
That's where things start to get really interesting. Because a closer look at those studies suggests that they might not be saying exactly what Mitolyn wants you to believe.
Ooh, this is getting juicy. Let's break down those studies and see what the science really tells us.
Okay, so let's unpack these studies one by one and see what they actually say. Remember, these are supposed to be the backbone of Mitolyn's whole argument about low mitochondria and slow metabolism.
Right, because they made it sound like this was settled science, Harvard scientists and all that.
Exactly. So the first study they cite, it is a real study, published in a reputable journal and everything.
Okay, so that's a good sign, right?
Yeah, it's not like they just made it up. But here's the thing. It looked specifically at mitochondrial function in white blood cells.
White blood cells, those are the ones that fight off infections, right?
Exactly. And while they're obviously important for our immune system, they don't necessarily represent the whole picture when it comes to our metabolism. Our bodies are pretty complex.
Right, so it's like they're taking a tiny sliver of information and trying to apply it to this much bigger concept.
That's a good way to put it. It's all about context, right? One study on one specific type of cell doesn't necessarily translate to a universal truth about metabolism.
Okay, so what about the second study? Did that one offer any more direct evidence?
The second study mainly focused on mitochondria's role in muscle tissue. which again makes sense. Muscles need a lot of energy to function, so they're going to have a high concentration of mitochondria.
Right, because that's where the energy is being produced. So more mitochondria in muscles equals more energy burned. Is that what they're saying?
Well, they're implying that, but the study doesn't actually make that direct connection. It's just looking at how mitochondria work within muscle cells, not at a person's overall metabolic rate.
I see. So 2 studies down, 2 to go. Do the other 2 provide more concrete proof? Like a clear link between low mitochondria and a slow metabolism?
Not really. The remaining 2 studies talk about the link between mitochondrial function and metabolic health in a broader sense, but none of the 4 studies actually say that low mitochondria are the sole cause of a slow metabolism or weight gain. It's much more nuanced than that.
So it seems like Mitolyn is cherry-picking data, pulling out bits and pieces from these studies to support their claims, kind of twisting the science to fit their narrative.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern. Scientific research is complex. It's easy to oversimplify things or take them out of context, especially when you're trying to sell a product. It's important to read those studies carefully and not just rely on someone else's interpretation.
Okay, so we've tackled the science, or at least Mitolyn's version of it. But what about those exotic ingredients they're so proud of? Do those hold up to scrutiny?
Let's find out. They've got this list of 6 supposedly superpowered nutrients in plants. Maki berry, rhodiola, hematococcus. All very impressive sounding names.
Yeah, I was especially intrigued by that maki berry. It sounds like something you'd find in a hidden jungle temple. Does it actually have all these amazing mitochondria boosting properties?
Well, maki berry is a real fruit. It's native to South America, and it is a good source of antioxidants, particularly a type called anthocyanins.
Antioxidants, those are the good guys, right? They protect our cells from damage.
Exactly. And the study's Mitolyn cites do suggest that anthocyanins might have a positive effect on mitochondrial function. But the focus of those studies was mainly on the berry's potential benefits for managing things like obesity and diabetes, not specifically about supercharging metabolism.
So maybe good for overall health, but not necessarily a magic bullet for mitochondria.
Right. Now, let's move on to rhodiola. This one's interesting because it's considered an adaptogen.
An adaptogen, what's that?
Adaptogens basically help your body deal with stress. So like when you're stressed out, you feel drained and exhausted, right?
Tell me about it. I'm running on fumes most days.
Well, it turns out stress can actually take a toll on your mitochondria too. It can disrupt their function and make them less efficient.
So if you're constantly feeling stressed and your energy is zapped, rhodiola might be something to look into.
Potentially, yeah. The studies they mentioned do link rhodiola to improvements in mitochondrial function, particularly in muscle cells. And it makes sense because adaptogens help our cells become more resilient to stress, which could protect mitochondria from damage.
Okay, so potentially helpful for stressed out mitochondria, especially in those hardworking muscles. What about hematococcus? That one still sounds like it's straight out of a spell book.
It's actually a type of algae, and it's packed with this powerful antioxidant called astaxanthin. Antioxidants, remember, act like little shields, protecting your cells from damage.
Right, so it's like giving your mitochondria a little extra armor.
Kind of. The studies they cite suggest astaxanthin might help protect mitochondria from damage and maybe even help create new ones, a process called biogenesis.
Hold on, creating new mitochondria. That sounds pretty impressive.
It does, but a lot of these studies are done in test tubes or on animals. We need more research, especially on humans, to confirm whether this actually happens in real life.
All right, fair enough. Next up, we've got amla, also known as Indian gooseberry, another antioxidant powerhouse, I'm guessing.
You got it. And again, the studies highlight its potential benefits for mitochondrial health, particularly in muscle cells. Are you sensing a theme here?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these ingredients are being linked to positive effects on mitochondria in our muscles.
That's a good observation. It might be because muscles have such high energy demands and rely so heavily on mitochondria, so it makes sense that researchers would focus on them. Now, let's move on to one you might be particularly interested in, Theobroma cacao.
Wait, is that what I think it is? Chocolate? Are you telling me chocolate is good for my mitochondria?
Well, Theobroma cacao is the source of cocoa beans, so you're not entirely wrong. Dark chocolate, in particular, contains a flavonoid called epicatechin, and the studies they reference suggest epicatechin might have positive effects on mitochondrial health. But we're talking about dark chocolate here, not the sugary milk chocolate kind.
So enjoying some dark chocolate in moderation could be a tasty way to support those tiny powerhouses. I like the sound of that.
It's definitely an enticing idea. And finally, we have schizandra, a berry that's been used in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries.
Schizandra. That one sounds pretty exotic. What's the deal with this one?
The study's Mitolyn sites suggest that schizandra might both increase mitochondrial creation and offer protection against something called oxidative stress.
Oxidative stress. That sounds intense.
It's basically a type of wear and tear on your cells, and mitochondria are especially vulnerable to it. Think of it like rust forming on a car. Anything that can help protect mitochondria from that kind of damage could be beneficial in the long run.
Okay, so to sum it all up, it seems like Mitolyn's ingredients do have some scientific backing when it comes to their potential benefits for mitochondrial health, but maybe not to the extent that they're claiming on their website.
Exactly. They're presenting a very simplified narrative, implying that these ingredients are a guaranteed fix for a sluggish metabolism. And that's just not the whole story. It's a lot more nuanced than their marketing suggests. And speaking of marketing, we haven't even touched on all the persuasive language and tactics they use on their website.
Right. Those attention-grabbing phrases like melt away fat and unlock your metabolic power. It's like they're playing on our desires and insecurities, trying to make us more likely to buy into the hype.
Yeah, and it's easy to get swept up in all that, especially when you see those before and after pictures and all those glowing testimonials. Oh yeah, the testimonials. I almost forgot about those.
They have people claiming they lost like 30, 40 pounds just from taking Mitolyn.
Right. Peggy, Russell, Connie, they've all got these incredible stories about how Mitolyn transformed their lives.
Yeah, and it makes you think, well, if it worked for them, maybe it'll work for me too.
That's exactly what they want you to think. But those testimonials are carefully chosen anecdotes designed to sell you something. They don't represent the average experience. Plus, we don't know the full story behind those weight loss journeys. Maybe they made other lifestyle changes at the same time. Maybe they were already on a different weight loss plan.
It's like those commercials where they show someone struggling to open a jar and then suddenly, bam, they're popping it open like it's nothing thanks to some miracle supplement. You never know what's happening behind the scenes.
Exactly. And don't forget about the limited time discounts and the money-back guarantees, all carefully crafted to create a sense of urgency and make you feel like you're getting an amazing deal.
It's like act now before it's too late.
Exactly. It's all part of their marketing strategy. They know how to push those buttons and get people to buy.
Okay, so we've covered the science, or at least Mitolyn's interpretation of it. We've talked about their marketing tactics and how they use testimonials and discounts to persuade people. But where does this leave our listeners? What are the key takeaways here? What should people keep in mind when they're bombarded with these kinds of health and wellness claims?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that critical thinking is key. You can't just take everything you see online at face value.
Right. Don't believe everything you read, especially when it comes to products that are promising miracle results.
Exactly. So do your research. Don't just rely on a product's website or a handful of glowing testimonials. Look for independent reviews and consult reputable sources like the National Institutes of Health. And most importantly, talk to your doctor or a registered dietitian.
That's such a good point. Your healthcare provider can give you personalized advice, taking into account your individual needs and any potential interactions with medications you might be taking. Because these supplements aren't always harmless, right?
Right. They can interact with certain medications or have side effects that you might not be aware of. So it's always best to err on the side of caution. And remember, even if a supplement doesn't have any negative side effects, it doesn't necessarily mean it's effective.
Right. Just because something is natural doesn't automatically mean it's good for you or that it will work as advertised.
Exactly. And on that note, supplements should really be seen as a complement to a healthy lifestyle, not a replacement for it. You know, balanced diet, regular exercise, managing stress, getting enough sleep. Those are the real foundations of well-being.
Those are the things we can actually control, right? Not some magic pill or potion.
Exactly. Supplements might be a tool in the toolbox, but they're not the whole toolbox.
I like that analogy. So while Mitolyn might be playing a bit fast and loose with their scientific claims and their marketing tactics, this deep dive has actually brought up a really interesting question. Could optimizing our mitochondrial health actually be a legitimate way to improve our metabolism and our overall wellness? I mean, we've seen that some of their ingredients do have some scientific backing when it comes to potential benefits for mitochondria. So is there something to this idea, or is it all just hype?
That's the question I want to leave you with. While we need more research to say for sure, emerging science does suggest that supporting mitochondrial function could play a role in metabolic health and maybe even in slowing down the aging process. It's a fascinating area of research, and I encourage you to explore it further.
And that's what I love about these deep dives. We start with a seemingly simple product like Mitolyn and end up uncovering a whole universe of scientific possibilities.
Exactly. It's all about staying curious and asking questions and never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.